Hi, I'm Howard Armistead. I'm an AIDS researcher originally from Los Angeles, California. I've been in Southern Africa now for 15 years. I became an AIDS researcher to save my own life because I've been HIV positive now for 34 years. I was infected in 1983, and in 1984, in April, I joined the MAC study, Multi-Centered AIDS Cohort Study at UCLA in Los Angeles. That's the largest study in the world about how HIV is transmitted from one person to another and how it progresses in the body and the nervous system. So I became an AIDS researcher, and initially my research was directed on cytokines, which is how cells communicate with each other, and that originated from the fact that I started experimenting on myself. And the third thing that I tried was aspirin, and that doubled my CD4 count for a brief period of time, 6 months. It's not too brief. Then I continued research, and almost 18 years ago, I came across selenium. I tried selenium, and that also doubled my CD4 count for an extended period of time. So then I became a selenium researcher, and I've been researching that for 18 years. I became an AIDS researcher to save my own life. At the time I was infected in 1983, there wasn't even a test to treat this, to tell if you were HIV positive or not. That's why in April of 1984, I joined the MAC study, the Multi-Centered AIDS Cohort Study at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, because I thought that if I was part of this research going on to try to understand this new disease, I would be plugged into the system, I would be plugged into the science. So in 1985, when they finally developed a test for HIV, I was in a group of the first people that were ever tested for this disease because I was part of the MAC study. When they determined that I was HIV positive, the scientist came to me and she said, "Howard, you're HIV positive, and you were HIV positive when you entered the study in April of 1984. So I can scientifically prove that I've been HIV positive since at least April of 1984, although I was infected about October of 1983 when I became deathly ill and sick in bed for a week with high temperature, sweating, etc." So I became interested in the science. I started monitoring the AIDS research that was going on by reading 3 different scientific newsletters that were looking at what treatments were being studied to treat HIV and what people were trying, experimenting on themselves. I started experimenting on myself. The first thing I tried was inacetylcysteine. And the MAC study, because it gave me a perfect record of my immune system, I was able to then track to see if something was working or not. So as soon as they took my blood, I could start a new experiment to try something. So I tried inacetylcysteine, it didn't work. The second thing I tried was St. John's wort. Again, after 3 months, my results came back. St. John's wort did nothing. The third thing I tried was aspirin, and after 3 months, that doubled my CD4 count. And I went to my doctor and I said, "What is this about aspirin that's doing this to my immune system?" And he said right away, "Well, we know aspirin is an immune booster because it reduces prostaglandin E2. I was shocked that my doctor, who was one of the top AIDS doctors in Los Angeles at the time, knew something that could boost the immune system but didn't tell me. So I said, if this top doctor in Los Angeles was not telling me, who was a personal friend of his, then he wasn't telling any of his patients, and if this top doctor was not telling his patients, nobody was being told. That's the day I became an AIDS researcher. I went back from that article that suggested that I could try aspirin because it increased interleukin-2 and alpha interferon, which were two aspects of the immune system that I knew scientists were looking at to possibly treat AIDS with. So I went to the University of Southern California Medical Library and started learning to read the medical literature and following the footnotes from one article to another. And eventually, today I've read over 1,500 medical journal articles totaling over 10,000 pages, and that's quite a bit, not to mention the 100 books that I've read on related subjects. So they say that to become an expert on anything, to become an expert violinist, to become an expert pianist, to become an expert at anything, you need to invest 10,000 hours of your time into that particular effort. I've invested well over 10,000 hours of my time in becoming what I am today, the leading autodidactic AIDS researcher in the world. Autodidactic means self-taught. That is, I don't have a PhD, I don't have an MD. I taught myself to be an AIDS researcher by reading the literature. We're a registered NGO, and we'll have on our website where you can help contribute through PayPal, etc.